Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Thank you so much for being here. In this video, I will be telling you all about the books that I read during the month of January 2025. And as with all of the Januaries, I feel like this month has been so long and I read quite a few books. I just have the feeling that I didn't do enough and that I didn't read enough. And granted, for me, at least, it was a very strange reading month because there were some books that I have struggled finishing. And now looking back, I almost feel like I shouldn't have pushed myself to finish these books because I had this weird mood the whole month and it just kind of hindered my experience with pretty much all of the books that I read. That being said, I still had some books that I have enjoyed and that I was excited for, and they didn't disappoint. So I am happy to tell you all about those as well. As I was writing my notes for this video, I thought it's going to be like something new and fun to do on the channel and organize these wrap-ups from worst to best, just so that you can get like a better idea on the books that I liked, on the books that I didn't necessarily enjoy, and what would be the books that I would recommend. So without any further ado, let's start talking about the books that got me very disappointed this month. And the first one is none other than When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I don't even know what happened with this book. I just ended up being very disappointed overall with the experience of reading it. Pacing wise, it just felt very slow and nothing really happened. The plot was pretty much non-existent. At the beginning of the book, when I started reading this one, I was probably 20% in and I was a bit confused as to what was happening with the world building and with the creatures and all of that stuff. And it is true that there is a glossary at the beginning of the book, and I just kept switching back and forth to that to have a better understanding of the world building and of everything that was presented to me in the beginning. And I got past that point. You have this really cool imagery with the dragons that are ascending to the sky and they are forming the moons of this world, which I thought was very unique. And me personally, I have never read anything quite like that before, so I was very excited to see where the story will go. Plot twist, it doesn't go anywhere. So I reached the midway point. I was still excited. I felt like it was dragging a bit, but it was nothing too drastic. And a little bit after the midway point, a big reveal was happening, but it was just so funny how anticlimactic and how boring it was. It was almost like it was thrown there to just be said and then to move on to the next thing. And that was the point for me when this book kind of fell apart. And as I said, I kept pushing myself to read it and to finish it. I just don't know if it was worth it. Actually, I do know it was not worth it for me to finish this because it almost put me in a reading slump, and I had this like weird mood throughout the whole month. Not only because of this, but this was a very big factor as to how I felt in regards to reading for the month of January. To me, it just felt like this was inspired by Throne of Glass, and even though Throne of Glass is not my favorite fantasy series, I still can appreciate it for what it did and how well it conveyed certain character arcs. But with this one, it just felt like the reveal from Throne of Glass was put into this book and then pretty much nothing else. And the romantic interest, I didn't see it at all. There is a lot of angst and frustration from our main character, and I get it. She had a traumatic past, but let's move on a bit from that and let's see what we can do in the future to heal that, to heal those traumatic things that happened. It was just weird. And in all honesty, I wouldn't recommend this book. Someone asked me on Threads, like I posted a picture of me starting reading this one, and I think I was like 40 or 50% into the book, and they asked me what I think about it, and I was like, you know what, I like the creatures, I like the world building. It's It takes a bit of time to get into it, but I like it as of right now. And I feel so bad because that was just the beginning. Right after I wrote that comment, everything went downhill. Yeah, it was rough. This book, no, no, I'm sorry, but no. Unfortunately, another disappointment for me during the month of January is The Ministry of Time by Kelly and Bradley. This book is so well loved by a lot of people. Unfortunately, it was just not for me, and I don't really see why this is so hyped. At its base, it is a science fiction novel, but it also has elements of romance and historical fiction and dystopian elements. And also, our main character is exploring generational trauma and her trauma with being white passing. And there's just like a lot of things that are happening in this book that I don't think any of them are done very good, unfortunately. To give you a bit of context as to what this book is about, so in the very near future, the British government is discovering time travel, but they don't know if time travel is safe for humans yet. So they are planning to extract these historical figures from the past that died in the original timeline and to bring them to the present so that they can be their test subjects, basically, and to see if they can adapt to the modern society. Our main character is assigned to Graham Gore, who is brought back from 1847. And Graham has to just assimilate everything that happened in this span of time from 1847 until the present day. As our main character is getting closer and closer to Graham, she grows more infatuated with him, and things are kind of escalating from there. One of the things that rubbed me the wrong way is that our main character is sexualizing and romanticizing this character who is very traumatized from this whole experience with the time travel, and it almost feels like she's grooming him into becoming this perfect version of a boyfriend for her, which is just, not great. I wouldn't say it's great. Also, the writing style felt very strange for me. There are all of these similes that are used and all of these metaphors that didn't make sense. I have a full-on reading vlog for this if you want to hear more examples of writing style and things that I don't think necessarily worked for this book. I feel like if this book would have done like only one thing, like only the romance or only the science fiction or only the historical fiction, I think this book would have been better. But in the same time, I kind of wish this book was a completely different book. So it is what it is. I will say though, the whole exploration of generational trauma and of childhood trauma of the main character with being white passing, I feel like those elements were really well done, and I could tell that there was a shift in the writing style when those things were addressed. I wish to see more of that from this author because I think those elements were done really, really well. But unfortunately, this book was just not for me. The Ministry of Time. Okay, so now we are slowly transitioning towards the books that I have enjoyed. This was kind of the middle of the road for me. I think it was okay, and that's pretty much it. This is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. This is a sapphic, dark academia, rivals to lovers kind of book. We are following Laura as she meets Carmilla in their first day of poetry class. And as with every dark academia book, we have also elements of obsession and thirsting for knowledge and the attraction towards dark magic and dark arts. And I think you can kind of picture where the story is going with the character named Carmilla. This is obviously inspired by Carmilla, but it was a bit surface level. Like, I don't think I know these characters that much after reading this book. They don't really let us as a reader know what they're thinking. So this is written in dual point of view, and with a structure like this, I always want to see very clearly defined narrative voices for the two characters. And I don't think they were that well defined in this book. The characters pretty much sound the same to the point where I was reading a chapter and I kind of forgot in which POV we were, and I would either have to go all the way to the beginning of the chapter to see the title or to pick up on certain context clues to figure out in which point of view we are in that chapter. Other than that, it was fine. I liked the atmosphere. It's very dark and gothic, and the setting, the villain of the story, I think it was okay for a quick story like this. It reads very fast. I think I finished this in like a day or something like that. And yeah, if you want more of a palate cleanser and nothing that serious, this is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. Next up, I have read a series that has been popular for a really long time, and I just got to reading the books that are currently out in this series. I am talking about The Empyrean by Rebecca Yarros, and this month I have read the first 3 books. These are currently out right now. I only have the physical copies of the 2 of them because the 3rd book just came out and I pre-ordered the physical copy of it. I just didn't receive it yet. I read the book on my Kindle because I was very excited for the 3rd one. So just to tell you a bit of my experience with reading this series, I will just put the books down because they're very heavy. But if I would have to rank all of the books individually in this series from worst to best, I definitely think Iron Flame is the weakest of them, so the 2nd book. Followed by Fourth Wing. That one was enjoyable. I think it was a very, very nice start for the series, and it got me excited for the future books. And then the best, I would say it's the last one that we have out right now, Onyx Storm. But part of that might also be because of my enjoyment and of the anticipation of reading that book. So, take it with a grain of salt. So let me tell you a bit about each book, starting with the first one in the series, which is Fourth Wing. I'm pretty sure everyone knows by now what this book is about, or this series, but I will just give you like a very brief summary or blurb as to what you can expect from these books if you have not read them until now. This first book is following Violet Soaringale, a 20-year-old, as she is trying to enter the scribe quadrant at a military college called Basgayath. The catch is the general of the school is also her mother. So her mother pretty much orders her to not enter the school as a scribe, but she wants her to become a dragon rider. And this is very bad news for Violet because becoming a rider is very cutthroat and you have to go through all of these tests and trials to prove yourself so that a dragon will bond with you. And at this college, when something goes wrong or when you fail a trial, you don't just get to redo that trial over and over again. You basically die if you fail. So things are going from here. Obviously, we have a love interest and they start pretty much as enemies to lovers, kind of. It is true that this first book has some cringy dialogue lines, but I kind of went past that because everything else was very fun. I loved the magic system. I love the dragons. Tern and Andarna, who are 2 of the dragons that we meet in this book, are just like so funny and relatable, and I just love their personalities so much. This is just fun. It's just fun, and I love how Rebecca Yarros was able to bring back some very popular fantasy tropes from like the 2010s, but in like a cool new way. So I had a great time reading Fourth Wing. Moving along to the second book in the series, which is Iron Flame. My main issue with this book is that the pacing is very slow And I don't think this needed to be this long. It's almost like 700 pages or more than 700 pages, I feel like. So this should have been a bit shorter, in my opinion. Also, there's like a whole miscommunication trope in this book that I didn't really care for. So it just started to become a bit annoying, at least in the first part of this book. But what I realized in retrospect after reading the third one as well is that in this book we have so many Easter eggs for the things that will happen in the future books. And I think that this book mainly sets up future events for future installments of the series. So I don't hate it as much as I used to when I read it. It's just, it was not as good as the first one, is what I'm trying to say. And then for the third book, Onyx Storm, that just came out, I will try to keep this very short and as spoiler free as possible, because I know not everyone read that book, and a lot of people are looking forward to be able to read it. So if you already read it, I have a full-on spoiler reading vlog up on the channel. It almost feels like Rebecca really listened to the general feedback for Iron Flame, and she improved upon some things in the third book, in the third installment. It was fast-paced. We got some answers and also more questions for future books. Something super big is revealed, something that we were all waiting for. There are new characters introduced, and one specific character was heavily rumored to make an appearance in this book, so we got that as well. Obviously, it ends on a massive cliffhanger. I feel like more so than the other books, because I read the last chapter a couple of times just to process what was happening and understand it better. So I'm already very excited for the fourth book in this series. I just don't think we're gonna see that very soon, because Rebecca said that she pushed herself a lot to finish this third book, and she wants to take some time off, which I can only respect. So I will be patiently waiting in the next couple of years for the fourth book in this series. If you want a romantasy series that starts very focused on the romance, but later on it transitions more so towards epic fantasy with a romantic subplot, then I would highly recommend this series if you have not read it yet. Next up, another very highly anticipated book for me personally. I have talked about this a couple of times on the channel, but this is Don't Let the Forest In by CJ Drews. I was waiting to get a physical copy of this book. I just couldn't find it anywhere, and I was very impatient, so I just ended up buying it on my Kindle and reading it digitally. And I am so happy that I have started my year with this book, because it was absolutely fantastic. This is the first book that I read in 2025, and I have no regrets, because it was everything that I wanted and more. It has elements of fantasy and horror. It has a very dark and gothic setting, and we are also dealing with a somewhat unreliable narrator, which is always very fun to navigate that in a book, I feel like. So in Don't Let the Forest In, we are following Andrew, who is in his last year of high school. And at the beginning of the book, it is alluded to the fact that something very big happened to Andrew in the last year of school. But we as readers don't know what that is just yet. Andrew is always writing fairy tales with a very dark twist to them, and some strange things start happening at the school throughout the school year. We very soon meet Thomas, who is Andrew's best friend, and he is an artist. He draws the monsters from Andrew's stories. As the time goes by, Thomas becomes more and more estranged with Andrew, and Andrew is very hurt by this. So one night he decides to follow Thomas in the forest that is just off of school property. And when he does that, Andrew discovers that Thomas is going to this forest to fight monsters because the monsters somehow came alive from his drawings, and they have to team up to figure out a way how to first of all battle these monsters but also make sure that they don't reappear. This book is so beautifully written. We have a forest full of decaying vegetation and rot. Our main characters are deeply troubled and sad and depressed and just melancholic, and the atmosphere is just impeccable. So if you enjoy these darker stories that are just on the verge of horror, I would highly recommend Don't Let the Forest In by CJ Drews. Next up, I have read a very short story from Alexi Harrow, The Six Deaths of the Saint. This is only like 30 or 35 Kindle pages, and it is available on KU. It is a very fast read. I think I finished it in less than an hour, but it is so impressive what Alexi Harrow is able to do with this story. I don't think I can tell you that much as to what is happening in this book just because it is so short. But the main idea is that we are following a girl who is used as a weapon by a prince, and this prince wants to conquer more and more territories so that he can become a king and then an emperor. And the catch is that this girl cannot be defeated in battle because the prince figured out a way to resurrect her over and over again. And as she is battling for this prince to conquer more territories, she very soon discovers that she's a weapon and the prince doesn't really care for her. So she has to learn what it truly means to be loved, to be appreciated, and what it means to be loyal to the people that love you. It is just so heartbreakingly beautiful and sad, and our main character is just confronted with a very tough decision to make in the end. I'm pretty sure I cried by the end of this short story, and I would highly recommend, if you are in a reading slump or if you don't know what to read next, Six Deaths of the Saint. And then last but certainly not least, my favorite book that I have read in the month of January is none other than All Fours by Miranda July. This book is so weird and funny and relatable and inspiring. I just couldn't believe what I was reading, truly. This book is following a moderately successful artist as she decides that she wants to do a cross-country drive from LA to New York. She is in her mid-40s, she is married, she has a kid. After she drives for like 20 minutes or so, she decides that she wants to exit the freeway, and she buys a room at this random motel and just stays there for the remaining of her trip. She explores the area, she makes somewhat friends with a guy working at a gas station, and she just feels really inspired to create art again, but not only that, to also re-evaluate and reimagine her life. This is quite literally a midlife crisis in a book form, and I am so here for it. This explores certain different topics such as menopause and gender identity, sexuality, the societal expectations that we have from women, monogamy, polyamory, what it means to be a parent, and this is just like scratching the surface of this book. So I adored this one. It is very Guilty as Sin coded by Taylor Swift. It is so well done. I am highly recommending All Fours by Miranda July. And that being said, this is the end of today's video. Please let me know in the comments down below what was your favorite book that you have read in the month of January, or what is a book that you are excited to read this month. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye everyone!